Hello and welcome back to Two Andrews, One Barbell. I'm Andrew Rowe and
I'm Andrew Blackwood.
We were just discussing where to start, but we do need to address the name.
Yes.
Because what did we call it the last time? Lifting lounge?
The lifting lounge we started off with, we were like, okay, it sounds kind of proper, professional.
Formal.
But when we were first coming up with a name, I put into ChatGPT, give me 100 names for a powerlifting podcast, two guys named Andrew. And one of the suggestions was Two Andrews, One Barbell. Now, I sent that to Andrew saying, ha ha ha, this is the worst name ever. Imagine if we use this.
Yeah, I thought it was hilarious. Loved it. Not seriously, just thought it was stupid and said, yeah, no.
So then I posted up on my Instagram story, joking again, Two Andrews, One Barbell. And I had two lovely gentlemen from the gay community reply to my story with overwhelming support. So we said, okay, we got to give the people what they want.
Give the people what they want.
We are now Two Andrews, One Barbell.
Yeah, kind of. It's a podcast though. We're sitting across from each other, but yeah, it'll do.
That's out of the way. Name change, Two Andrews, One Barbell going forward. Now, into the actual podcast.
Okay, so we're going to start with a recap because the last podcast was just before we flew to Budapest.
Yes, for European Championships.
How did we get on at European Championships?
Yes. So we flew over, I think it was 2 or 3 days in advance of you lifting, and then I was the day after you. So before we even get into the lifting, there were some funny things that happened beforehand. So maybe we'll just detail our trip over and then get into the boring powerlifting stuff. So we flew over together. There was a bit of a mix-up initially where we had to divide as soon as we landed. It was like midnight when we landed in Budapest, and
we sorted separate accommodation, like.
Yeah. So we, myself and my girlfriend, ended up in an airport hotel, which was like 2 minutes away, super duper handy. When we'd been planning it initially, we thought it wouldn't be possible to have Andrew join us because they told us that our room was going to be 2 single beds, and we were like, sorry, Andrew, we can't change it. When we arrived at said airport hotel, we had like 3 or 4 beds in the room, and Andrew was in
30 minutes away.
He was in like
a derelict
€100 taxi to go through Budapest City, and I was like, "Have you left yet?" And unfortunately, he had. So, where did you end up going? You went all the way into Budapest City.
Into the city, but it was too dark to see anything. So, but from there, I was fine. I went to sleep.
Yeah, we had to get food basically because at the time leading into the competition, I was eating a little bit over like 5,000 calories a day, and obviously when you're traveling all day, I think I had like 2,500 calories left to eat. So we were looking around, there was a restaurant in the hotel that we said, okay, perfect, let's get some food. Walked into the restaurant, they had just closed as it turned midnight, so.
They had just closed, they were selling clothes?
Closed, they had just closed. Yeah. They were open for business and then they were closed for business.
The evening, okay.
So we were like, okay, what can we do? We went to reception, is there anything we can order? And they said, no, you can't order anything, but there's McDonald's that's like a 10-minute walk away. So we're going, okay, perfect, we'll go to McDonald's. So we're walking all the way to McDonald's, we get there, go to walk in the door, and it's shut. So we're going, what the hell? The drive-thru is open, but there's like 30 cars already waiting in the drive-thru, and it's like midnight. We're going, oh my God, could you be arsed? But I need to get my cows in, so yes. So we're thinking, okay, I'm looking at the signs that says you're not allowed to walk through the drive-thru, but I'm saying your front door is closed, I have no option. So there's 30 cars in the line, I just have to line up behind them and sort of trawl through this drive-thru.
Alana on your back.
Oh yeah, to make it look, anyway. So we're going through this, it took, I think it was like 45 minutes before we even got to the little speaker where you put your order in. We're waiting at the speaker, all the signs and stuff are in Hungarian. I thought like there might be like a bit more English, but I was a little bit surprised. And they would not take our order. I was like standing at the speaker trying to like tap on it, being like, hello, can I like get nuggets, anything? And they just would not answer. So we were standing there, all the cars were behind us then still. So we're like, okay, we're holding up the whole queue. What are we gonna do here? Okay, we better just leave. As soon as we walked forward, the other car behind us pulled up and they took that person's order straight away. So we're going, fuck. So the only other option, like I need to eat still, is go to like the window where they hand you out your food. So we just went to the window, like knocked on the window. We were like, please, I know you're not allowed to like take our order, but like we just arrived from the airport. We don't have a car yet. Can you please just give me food? So anyway, thankfully they took our order. After like an hour and 15 minutes of waiting around at this drive-thru, we eventually got a bit of food, ate that was fine, went home, back to the hotel, went to bed. Next day, got up, picked up a car, a rental car, and headed to our Airbnb.
Yeah, actually, I completely forgot about this, right? So I turned up early. I was like, right, perfect. I'll turn up early, get my bags in, and be ready to go to the shop so we can acquire some nutrients that wasn't McDonald's. Get ready for the day after, because I was lifting the day after. And I get there. Alana sends me the details of how to get into the place. Perfect. I find the place eventually, get up the stairs, find the lockbox for the key, get the key. I'm like, okay, perfect. Doesn't occur to me that anything could go wrong. And I go to open the door and I'm like, oh, that's funny. The key doesn't really work. I'll just use another key on the bunch. Oh, that's weird. That doesn't open the door either. So opening a door is not that difficult. Like, I was like, surely I'm not this tired from the travel. So I was like, okay, like maybe I'm not strong enough. Like I'm not like pushing the door, whatever. So I text Andrew. I was like, come on, look, I can't open the door. Just quickly. Yeah. And he was like, yeah, that's fine. You're such an idiot, whatever. Turns up, he's like, give me the keys. Yeah, he puts them in the door. Nothing. He's like, oh, okay. Lana's like, actually,
let me have
the
a
woman
go.
here will sort it. No, nothing happened.
Fiddling around.
She texts the Airbnb host. The Airbnb host has the audacity to ask, did you try pushing the door when you turned the key? Fuck off. Anyway.
But that was after 25 minutes of waiting around with no reply.
About 25 minutes, no reply, and multiple.
Where each of us is having a go for like 2 minutes to see if we can find out some configuration to open this door. The issue was there was a bottom lock by the door handle. Yeah. Okay, you could twist that one, that would turn perfectly, no problem. But there was like a top lock as well, like a latch kind of thing. And the key it just didn't fit. And we were trying to look to see if the shape of the key would line up. It was just totally wrong. So we're scratching our heads going, there's genuinely nothing that we can do. So then the Airbnb host goes, did you try turning the key and pushing the door? So we're looking at each other going, is this person for real? So then she's going to send a video of you trying to open the door. So we're like, each of us is taking a turn for the video to try to twist the key. And eventually, I'd say we'd been standing in this kind of hallway for
45 minutes.
Yeah, 45 minutes to an hour.
At this one, I haven't eaten. Yeah. I've had a coffee.
And what's it now? It's 3 o'clock maybe?
3 o'clock in the day.
So eventually she goes, twist the bottom lock 5 times. And we're going, what the?
That could have been first. That was the first. If I had a complicated way to get into my house, I would tell someone the complex part first.
Anyway, so then we twist it once. It doesn't twist again. So we're going, this person is having us on. This is a prank. This is what's going on? And then they go, pull the door handle towards you and then twist the key 5 times. We did that. We got in eventually after standing in the doorway, withering away. So then we get in. I think that was kind of plain sailing that day. We just went, got some food.
Ate loads of food.
Yeah, because you were competing the next day.
Yeah, so I was just stuffing my face. Giving myself the gags. Yeah. Have we talked about the gags on?
Maybe not on here.
So the gags is what we call when you are bulking so hard and you gag for no good reason at any point in the day, especially morning and night for me.
Teeth brushing
and actually, honestly, the thought of the gags now is nearly bringing it up. But it's especially teeth brushing, loud gags. It's disgusting.
Almost
I gave myself the gags. Pasta, just a full bag of pasta. I don't know how I thought I was going to eat it. I did. Couldn't move after. Couldn't talk after. Anyway.
So actually, just a quick note on the gags. I've been in a little bit of a deficit over the last couple of weeks. Haven't had the gags. Haven't had them at all. So
there you have it, folks. Yeah. If you want to avoid the gags, lose weight. It's the byproduct of just getting good.
Yeah. So anyway, you were then competing the next morning. How were you feeling in advance of the competition? What did you kind of do the night before? Was there anything that you did to get in the right frame of mind? Anything like that?
So Andrew and Alana sleep at 8 p.m. This was one thing I was not expecting. It hit 9 and both of them were really quiet. We were laughing all day. Actually had a really funny, I'm not going to explain, but we laughed for 10 minutes over something while Andrew's eating his cashews and everything. Really good video. But we were having great crack. And then at 9, it's like when kids need a nap. And it's they went completely quiet. I was like, what? What's wrong? I'm nervous for tomorrow. Give me something. And they're like, it's bedtime. I was like, I haven't eaten my second, my dinner, let alone supper.
So what time do you normally go to bed?
It's got to be 12,
Okay.
And Andrew heard this and was...
Yeah, I'd say 9:30, 10 o'clock, I'm gone.
He's asleep,
fast asleep.
So anyway, they go to bed, I stay up, watch Disney Plus, eating more food, and then more food and oats and everything. But the competition in general, it didn't have me that stressed. Like normally this was comp 11. All 10 competitions prior, regardless of the stakes, just a general level of nerves. I think it's normal to be anxious for your performance. You just want to do well, regardless of what's happening, what's on the line. You care, like we put so much time into this. But this one, though I still wanted to do really well, and I was very aware. I slept perfectly fine. Normally I kind of have nightmares and don't sleep too much. I slept like 10 hours, it was perfect. And then on the way there, it's kind of, I'm very familiar with the process now, and that is part of international competitions. You know, the last time I was out, or maybe on my third international, I forgot my passport to the weigh-in, so then I had to go to the bottom of the list. Panicking. So there's a lot of things, like a lot of new things that, whereas when you're home and you're with people in your club, coaches in your club, people that you're familiar with, it's all very easy. But when you're away, it can be a little bit daunting. But this time,
you're experienced now.
It was fine. So I went in, I recognized all the lifters, recognized all the coaches, recognized the setup, kit check, weigh-ins. I weighed in first, nothing to worry about. I'm sure I think they laughed when they saw my weigh-in. I think I was 98.8.
105s.
I was the only one below 100 kilos, which was funny, but also a nice motivator now. And on that, today, we hit a milestone, first time ever, 100 kilos. 100.4 kilos is absolutely
He's a real man now.
Yeah, I'm a real man. Like we used to say, Andrew sent me the first time I hit like 200 pounds. Like he is obviously there and above in advance. And he sent me a picture and it was like, oh, me and my homies hate people below 200 pounds. It's a joke.
And now it's 220.
Now it's 220 pounds.
Me and my homies hate everyone under 220.
If you're not 220 pounds, you can't come on the podcast. So we have all of like 3 people to have on the podcast. That's what that makes. But I'm delighted. So we weighed in really light. And from there, it was just smooth sailing. It was, you know, I had 3 handlers, which was nice. Keen Madden, Alex Cremens, and Matt Henry. Got on really well. I had the crack. Because I was less anxious, I was able to just have the crack. Sing, dance, joke.
Embrace the experience.
Embrace the experience. And I'm so glad I went. But that's how I was feeling. The competition went great. So as I mentioned in the last podcast, I was away for the summer in America. When I got invited to the competition, I was going to decline the invitation because of the position I was in. I was like 90 kilos, drinking multiple times a week and lifting considerably less weight. I was still training, but kind of just damage control. I was just like making sure I didn't come back an absolute string bean. Anyway, I took the invitation on Andrew and my coach Adam's recommendations, and I'm so glad because even just for the experience, it was absolutely fantastic. And I said, I think when I came to the realization that I could be happy whether I squatted 20 below my PB or squatted 20 plus, and I ended up 5 kilos below my squat PB, so squatted 270, benched a PB, 185, benched more than Andrew as well. Let's just, I'm actually going to clip this and put it on Instagram. I benched more than Andrew again, and he's never catching up again. He's never catching up again. So that's just important to highlight that I benched more than Andrew. It was 185 kg. He benched 182.5 kg, 2.5 less than me. And then deadlifted 275, which is also 5 below my PB. So total 730, only 7.5 less than before America.
Than your best.
And that was not what I was expecting. I was coming in looking at like if I could get close to a 7 again, because realistically I was
that's where you were at that time.
Was the max in July, like so I was delighted, really happy. Then
me?
Yeah.
So at this time when Andrew was competing, it's interesting for myself. I don't really like watching people lift before I compete. So we had rented a car, we drove Andrew to the venue, but when the majority of the competition was going on, I didn't really want to be sitting in the crowd watching the whole thing. I just wanted to be there to support Andrew. So we had like the stream on in the background, and I went and just like kind of sat in the car and went on my phone and watched Netflix or just different shows. And then I would hear, okay, his flight was about to start. I knew when he would be in. So then I would get up, I would walk into the venue. When Andrew was about to lift, I'd be there to cheer and support him. And then when he would be done, whether it was squats or bench or deadlift, I would just go back out into the car again and then eat more food, hang out, chill, just try to not put myself in a position where I will start like overthinking or stressing out. Or what I find the main reason why I don't like watching people lift is just seeing their numbers and then starting to compare my own numbers to them and then getting in the mindset of, okay, if I hit X, Y, Z, then I would be able to match that. And maybe if I lose however much body weight, I could be competitive in this class and da. And I felt that starting to come on when I got to the venue. So I was like, okay, let me just remove myself from this situation so I don't put myself in a position where I do get stressed, because I wasn't. I was like, I was happy, I was comfortable, I was confident, but I didn't want anything to interfere with that then. So supported Andrew, that was amazing. Then when he was finished lifting, it was my turn. I was competing the next day. So what time did you finish lifting? Maybe like 5 p.m., something like that? Yeah, so we would have headed home then. Just got more food in, pretty much the same as you, just tried to stuff my face as much as possible leading into my own day of lifting, just so you're full, have a ton of energy. I think we just watched like tons of Netflix that evening, just try not to think, just switch off, like energy conservation mode, just stay very chill. Did that. Worth noting, the night when you were going to be competing the next day, my stomach was doing like backflips that night, like the whole way through the night. I didn't sleep great. I woke up in the middle of the night and I had to go to the toilet. I checked my phone and it was 4:44 a.m. And I was like, oh, interesting. That's like an interesting time to like see on my phone. Anyway, went to the toilet, went back to bed. The night of my competition, I was asleep and the bed in the Airbnb was not great, right? The bed was not very good. It was kind of like cheap. It was like an IKEA kind of bed. So middle of the night, fast asleep, I like rolled over a little bit and I just heard like a massive bang. I was like, what the fuck? And then obviously like when I woke up from that, I moved another bit and then I heard another massive bang. I was going, what is going on? It's the bed like breaking beneath me. Like I'm the heaviest that I've ever been, but that's a bit excessive. Like what's going on? So I was like, okay, just stay still, stay motionless, don't move. You don't want to like snap the bed. You need to like stay asleep because you're lifting tomorrow. So I must have drifted off to sleep again. And then the next time I woke up, it was 3 massive bangs, like bang, bang, bang after one another. And I fell through the bed, like fully through the bed onto the ground below. Like the mattress sunk through the bed. I was going, what the fuck? So from there, had to like move over to the other side of the bed then, so I could still like go back to sleep. It was fine. I was stressed in my mind because I was like, I've just broken the bed. I'm gonna have to like pay extra in this Airbnb. They're gonna like charge me all this stuff. Anyway, tried to put it to the back of my mind. When I got up in the morning, I talked to Alana and she goes, do you know what time that was that the bed broke through? She goes, it was 4:44 a.m. when I looked at my phone. I was going, geez, that's mad weird. She goes, they're angel numbers, don't you know? So I'm going, what the hell is an angel number? She goes, Google it. So I Googled whatever the 444 angel numbers are, right? And get this, it's the first thing that came up on Google was something along the lines of, your determination and hard work will soon be rewarded. So I'm going, this is like, that's crazy. As much as like this is even like a coincidence and I don't necessarily buy it, the fact that that actually happened, I was like, the universe is on my side or something. This is amazing. I can't fail now. So got up that morning, drove into the venue. That was fine. I weighed in 113.5 kilos, something like that. So heaviest I've ever been. I think it was around like 2 kilos heavier than I'd been in Junior Worlds 6 weeks prior. So in fairness, I pushed body weight quite excessively in that period of time. My thought process was, I don't want to get injured. Like in a quick turnaround like that, here, there, and that hindered my performance. So I was like, if I can just keep food as high as possible, keep recovery high, then that will just stack the cards in my favor for a good performance. So that's what we did. Had a little bit of extra chub that I noticed. I wasn't super happy with body composition, but it was a worthwhile sacrifice. I knew that I was going to go into a deficit either way after the competition. The lifting itself went amazing. So the plan coming in was if I could even add 2.5 kilos to each lift, that would have given me the open national record, which would have been like a great achievement, yada, yada, yada. I wasn't too attached to that, but if I could have taken it, amazing. I didn't really know where I stood in terms of medals. Going into the competition, I had no idea where I even was in the nominations until the Irish Powerlifting Federation made a promo post of everyone leading into it, and they said, Andrew Blackwood, nominated 5th, only 10 kilos behind 2nd place. And I saw this post, I was like, what the hell, really? Like, what? I'm that high up? So from then I was like, okay, maybe I am in with a chance of doing well here, but I don't want to buy into it too much. Nominations can be all over the place. Someone could come from the 15th nomination and have a crazy meet and come first. Someone who's nominated really high could be injured. That actually happened. And then they have to take a token squat of 70 kilos, something like that. So yeah, I try not to buy into nominations too much anyway. Squats came around, we took a 2.5 kilo PB, which ended up being a bronze medal squat as well of 307.5 kilos. That was great. Again, for my third squat, I didn't actually know what they had put on the bar. I knew for the first 2 attempts, I would like sort of collaborate with them. I was like, okay, this is what I think we should jump to. This is what I think I have. For the third one, I was like, you just load whatever you reckon. They put 307.5 on, knowing, I presume, that it would have been a bronze medal. We hit that, amazing. Then bench came around, was feeling good again. I liked the Rogue bench that they were using at Euros. It's like thick, I think. It's
grippy.
Yeah.
The rubber on it is really grippy. Like you can't, when you're setting up, like you have to set up wherever you're starting because you can't slide on it. Like it's great. It's really good.
And it's not even necessarily a fat pad, but it has like a bit of squish to it as opposed to the Eleiko bench, the new Eleiko, which I don't love. It's like a plank of rubber.
Yeah.
So, yeah. So I was feeling good, warming up for that. That was great. But for whatever reason, I opted to be a little bit more conservative on bench. So we took like a reasonable jump for my second. And again, for my third, even though they were kind of feeling good, and Alex, who was handling me, was like you could jump more, but whatever, we'll take the conservative route. I kind of just wanted to go six for 6, so then I could build whatever I needed on deadlifts. Went out for my third attempt, 182.5, which is 2.5 kilos less than Andrew. I smoked it. It was probably like RP sub 5, but I just wanted to make Andrew feel good so he would have something to take away from the competition.
Yeah.
Because I knew if I benched to my true capability, he would feel awful about himself. And I don't want to do that to my friend. So anyway, I sandbagged bench quite a bit to look after you. Then deadlifts came around. And by this stage, since squat and bench had gone so well, I kind of knew just I was in for a good day. So everything felt good, warming up. We took reasonable jumps. We opted for 2.5 kilos above my PB, which ended up being a gold medal deadlift at European Championships, which was an amazing experience for me because I'd been on the fringe of medals for quite a while. There's been a few World and European Championships where I came fourth on deadlifts on like body weight. So this time, again, I didn't know what they were loading for my third. I just said, you do whatever you need to do. I had a feeling they'd probably put in fake nominations and change it around and then kind of let me pull whatever I would have needed to get medals as necessary. So that's what we did. As I was walking out, I saw on the screen, so I didn't know until I was on the platform and I looked over and I saw 337. And when I saw that, I was like, oh, that actually will be easy then. There's only 2.5 more than before. Pulled it, amazing. When I went into the back, there was someone pulling after me. So if they had made it, then they would have taken the gold. I would have got silver. I was watching from behind the curtain. They missed their attempt, unfortunately for them, fortunately for me. So I ended up getting gold medal. That was amazing. Went out, medal ceremony, get to stand on the podium, relive my sub-junior days. That was great. Then after that, we had some celebrations.
We did actually.
We may not go into too much.
Well, no, we had a great night. Like we had a great night because you and I don't get to celebrate often.
Yeah,
you know,
true.
As much as that's a nice way to meet up. Like, we don't. We train and we record podcasts and we talk, but we don't drink.
Yeah.
So it was nice to have an opportunity to do that, and especially when coming into the competition. Yes, I was drinking all summer, but running into it, I wasn't, and you probably hadn't drank in a good while.
Yeah, months, I would say. Yeah.
And then after the competition, you're like, oh, I hate drinking. Maybe I just won't drink. But it ended up being fun, you know.
It was a great night.
For what is seldom is nice, like.
Yes.
So what did we do?
We met up with lifters from other teams. So there was some GB lifters, there were some French lifters.
Barbecue Charlie.
There was some Spanish lifters. We ended up in a karaoke bar for a while. That was pretty good with all the powerlifters. It was actually only us. We took over the bar. Yeah. And then since it was such a good time, then people started coming in off the street. There was a lovely gentleman from Texas who joined the entourage. Yeah. That was great. Ended up going to a club somewhere. Texas actually led us to the club.
Texas led us to the club. Texas, you know, I wasn't too sure what to think about Texas. Texas was just standing around, kind of like, the odd like flirty thing thrown into like us, the girls. We didn't really know what was going on. We just held our cups by the top just in case. And
just to explain, Texas was like a 45-year-old man as well.
By himself.
Who was by himself in the karaoke
Texas,
bar.
in Budapest.
Yeah.
So anyway, we let him follow along, but he led us to a spot and it was all right.
Yeah, that was pretty good. Yeah. Our night ended somewhat abruptly. We
Assisted.
Yeah, we assisted a fine gentleman from the Irish team back to his hotel.
A fallen soldier.
Yeah, that was fine. And then from there, we decided, okay, it's like 3 a.m. Probably best for everyone to go to bed because you were flying the next morning.
Yeah.
So that's what we did, headed back to our Airbnb. Then, we just got up the next morning, dropped our rental car off.
I went
home. You headed home. Flight was fine. Yeah. And then myself and Alana stayed on for another 3 days, I believe, in Budapest, which was nice. We got to do like the kind of touristy stuff, a river cruise and the Danube. Hopefully that's hopefully that's what the river is. Yeah. We got to do that. That was nice. Cool architecture, cool buildings. Just saw what Budapest had to offer. That was fun. Then we flew home. And
before we move on from Budapest, I could sound really stupid here. I didn't know this. You definitely didn't know this.
Yeah.
Budapest is Buda and Pest.
Yeah. That's bizarre. So it's like 2 cities, 2 towns, 2 something?
I
still don't know.
I don't know.
I actually still don't know.
Imagine Dublin being split by the Liffey. Dub and Lynn.
Yeah.
Anyway.
Bizarre.
I'm from Dub, you're from Lynn. So, nutty. But
so, that was very interesting. Anyway, so we both came home. Your plan now is you are trying to fill out the 105s as best as possible?
Yeah, just eating everything, sleeping better, which I have been, and training with, right now, the intent to gain as much muscle as possible. Mm-hmm. And I'm we're both about 20 weeks out from junior nationals, which is in April.
I actually didn't know that.
Yeah, so it's a significant chunk of time, enough time where I'm going to spend a significant chunk of time with hypertrophy as the main focus and not worry about weight on the bar. Yeah. And then slowly flip that focus the closer we get to the comp.
Yeah, more specific.
You're in a slightly different situation.
Yeah, so actually from the last podcast, there's been a big change of plans. So in the last one, we were talking about how we were thinking, okay, definitely going to come down to 105 after this competition because I have built for a long time. Now I can kind of reap the rewards of all that time being spent in the surplus. But after this competition, having seen the success that I did, I felt I actually do have the potential to podium at international competitions. Well, I did.
That was the question mark. Yeah. It was, do you stay at 120 and not podium or go down to 105 and try? Yeah. But now that the middle option is opened up of staying and podiuming.
And podiuming. That seems the most enticing option to me. Also, another factor of that was watching the 105s and seeing the standard of the 105s is rising. Yeah. So if I'm going to be spending months in a deficit, not going to be building a ton of strength. The likelihood is you're going to be losing strength if you're dropping almost 10 kilos body weight. Then only leaving myself 8 weeks of like productive training where I can eat in a surplus leading into world championships. Likelihood is I'm not going to be adding a significant amount to my total. I'm going to have spent a year in a deficit, not really enjoying training, I would say. Whereas if I fill out the 120s, likelihood is I'm going to see some big gains during that time.
Might bench more than me.
I definitely will bench more than you.
We'll revisit that point like in 6 months' time.
We'll see. We'll find out.
Yellow,
now the plan is, since I push body weight quite excessively in that quick turnaround, I am in a bit of a deficit at the moment. I think I'm going to carry it out for maybe another 3 weeks or so. When I came back from Budapest, I was 114 kilos. At the moment, I'm sitting between 110 and 111. So I would say I'm not going to go any lower than 108. Yeah. Then when I reach that low point of 108, I know as soon as I reintroduce food, you're going to see a spike of a kilo or so. So I'll probably be back up 110, and 110 will likely be my baseline to build from over the next 10 months, whatever it is, into Junior Worlds for next year. That's how we're looking at the moment. I think that takes us into...
Man, come Junior Worlds, you're going to need to look for an Airbnb with this reinforced fucking bed. It's going to be made of titanium bed frame. We'll
be chunky by then.
Oh yeah.
So I think from these competitions, we both saw quite a bit of success.
Yeah.
And that is kind of a testament to the experience that we have built up now. And that led us into the idea that we had for this podcast, where we will dive into the things that we wish we knew when we were starting lifting, or even within our first couple of years of lifting. The things that have accelerated our progress the most over recent years, because we are in our 6th or 7th year of powerlifting specifically.
Yeah.
But over these last 1 or 2 years, I've seen the most progress that I ever have, which is not necessarily what you'd expect, the law of diminishing returns and all of that. But yeah, we've come to some conclusions as to what has helped us the most.
I like to think that this is what young Andrews would have wanted to have access to. It's almost like we're putting together a little guide. We typed a bit out, but we're just going to conversate and let it flow and see what we come up with. But the topics that we've written down already are what I know. If we went back 5 years ago, it would have been a goldmine to have this, where we didn't actually need to learn it through experience. We just learned it there and then.
Didn't have to make the mistakes.
Yeah, but these are what we've compiled through our own mistakes and learning to what we think is the most important things to know. And for all powerlifters, regardless of what stage you're at. It's not. 100%. This isn't necessarily a what beginners should do. This is what
you should do.
What you should do if you powerlift.
And I think the number one thing, like the most important above all else, is the importance of building muscle for long-term success within powerlifting. Like how important it is to fuel yourself adequately, eat in a surplus, spend the majority of your time in a surplus, and the carryover that has to your strength gains. Because I know for myself in the beginning, and this kind of will tie into two separate like subtopics of nutrition, but then also like accessory work. On accessory work specifically, I know when I started out, it was something that I seriously neglected. And for whatever reason, there was like a thought process at the time, or the people who were around me, there was this idea that like you didn't really need to do accessory work, and like specificity was the absolute most important thing, hands down. And in my opinion, I specialized in the powerlifts way too early on. And I saw like a decent amount of progress in my first couple of years as a sub-junior 93, and I was quite strong. But soon after that, I hit a massive roadblock where I spent 2 years spinning my wheels of making little to no progress. And I just could not, I had no idea what was like causing that. I thought I was doing absolutely everything right. I was ticking all the boxes, but for whatever reason, I wasn't making progress. And I was dumbfounded. I would message you all the time. We touched on the previous podcast, like going around in circles, why am I not getting better? And looking back, I cannot believe, like I actually can't believe how I did not understand that building muscle was going to be the key out of that. So 2021, December, after having a terrible competition of trying to maintain, I realized everyone I'm competing against is so much more jacked than I am. They have so much more muscle mass. How can I possibly expect to bench the same weight as these guys when I have tiny, skinny noodle arms, no triceps, just no upper body mass? And I look around at the people I'm competing against with massive upper body, massive pecs, shoulders, arms. And I was like, oh, well, that's the most obvious difference. You look at the most successful powerlifters. They're all jacked. Like they all have a ton of muscle. So I was thinking, okay, how do I then close that gap between me and these other people? I need to build more muscle. How do you build more muscle? You eat in a surplus and you push accessory work hard. And that's what I started doing. So since December 2021, I embarked on my journey of a surplus. It's been almost 2 years exactly of eating in a surplus. I've gained almost like 20 kilos body weight. During that time, I had a big shift in the way that I approached training as well. Instead of being super like hyper specific with squat, bench, deadlift, and then sandbagging my accessory work, like skipping accessories half the time, making excuses as to why they're not that important, I almost flipped that script. And I would come in and I would hit like the baseline volume that I needed with SPD, And then I would do almost a full bodybuilding workout after my competition work. And from there, I started noticing after a couple of months, oh shit, my arms are starting to get big. My chest is starting to get big. Oh, my shoulders are starting to get big. And even though I wasn't pushing SBD hard, I was hitting big bench press PBs and my squat was starting to go up. My deadlift, a little bit in the middle. I still saw progress on it, but the rate wasn't as quick. Leverages change a little bit as you get heavier. That's quite a common thing. So your deadlift may not shoot up as much, but still I started to see progress because I just had more muscle mass. And I know I've heard some people debate the importance of muscle mass or how much of a role that plays in your long-term success within powerlifting, but in my opinion, it is like the number one determining factor of how strong you will be long-term. I think you would agree on that. You would have similar experiences.
When you talk about it, and when you talk to me about it, it's like you're expressing your opinion to a soundboard, and you're just, I might like add things or adjust things, but really your opinion is set. And your biggest argument when this started to become apparent to you was that it's the most salient thing it's the most obvious thing amongst the best. When you compare the best with those more average lifters, the most clear difference, we don't have access to their programs, we don't have access to their day-to-day habits unless they put up vlogs or whatever. But what is very obvious just from a glance is that the people at the top are jacked.
Yeah. It's kind of that simple.
So I'm sure there is more to it. I'm sure there is. But, it's hard to deny that when we go through periods of gaining weight, gaining mass, doing the things we're saying, our clients do the same thing, other lifters do the same thing, we see progress. When you do the opposite,
you don't.
Especially the opposite. You were saying, you're trying to maintain, stay in a class.
Yeah.
I went through numerous occasions, numerous summers where I was like, oh, well, I have to have abs this summer. Maybe it's because of the culture I grew up with, where I was watching more bodybuilding YouTube as opposed to powerlifting YouTube.
Yeah.
So Christian Guzman, summer shredding, he'd be cutting every summer. So it's just natural to me. People in my life did it, and my sister did it. She's not a powerlifter. So to me, it was like, oh, well, I'll just get lean for summer, because what if I have to take my top off? This is coming from a person who was already lean. If I was that lean, if I was at that starting point now, I'd be wearing no top, walking around the shopping centre. I'd be posting my abs left, right, and centre. But for some reason, I felt I still needed to be leaner, and I wish I could go back and just shake my head and say, look, you look great. And then now I've gotten to the point where, and it is worthwhile noting that as you bulk, you do have to adjust to your body image. Like it's a significant change. It's not 1 kilo. We've gained. Like I was saying, I weighed 100 kilos today and I was 59 when I started. I weigh a person extra. I don't look the same at all. And you kind of have to it's a big adjustment to accept what you look like and what you will look like as you gain weight. So I wish I could go back and tell myself, you'll still feel good when you get bigger.
Just to touch on that as well, I know for myself, that was the biggest concern I had when I considered moving up in weight, because I thought, okay, I'm 93 kilos now, and I'm kind of lean, but I'm not super happy. Like I'm not shredded by any means. So if I'm moving up in weight, then I'm definitely not going to look good. I'm going to look terrible. I'm going to be a bowling ball. I'm going to be obese. And I didn't want that. I was like scared of that. When I actually got over that fear and started eating in a surplus, from 93 to 100 kilos, I didn't even notice any significant body fat gain. I just felt my shoulders were getting bigger, my arms were getting bigger, my chest was getting bigger, my back was getting bigger, my legs were getting bigger. I just looked better. I was like, what, this is like a cheat code. Like how am I eating more food, getting stronger, performing better, and looking better? This is amazing. I'm never stopping this. I'm gonna bulk to infinity. So obviously you can't do that. And there does come a point where there are some negative trade-offs in terms of body composition. I noticed that when I went a little bit above 110. 110 was kind of that point for me that I noticed, okay, I'm having a little bit more chub. A bit of a spare tire around here. But in my mind, I wasn't concerned, because I knew, firstly, it was the trade-off for me getting stronger in the short term. I knew this additional weight was going to make me the most competitive lifter that I could for this short-term goal that I had in this competition. Secondly, it's not permanent. Like, just because you move up in body weight and gain a bit of body fat, doesn't mean you can never lose it. So even though in that, like, say, short period where it was like the 6-week turnaround, I wasn't doing a ton of accessories or a ton of volume, but I was still pushing food quite hard, I noticed that I was getting a little bit fluffier, a little bit softer. I was like, that's fine, because in 6 weeks, I'll just bring it back down and I will trim off some of that fat. And it is so much faster to lose body fat than it is to build muscle. Like, I don't have an exact split of time that you should spend in a surplus versus a cut, but like, I spent almost 2 years in a surplus, and I'm gonna spend 4 weeks in a deficit, and I'm gonna train. Like, even in the first 2 weeks of the deficit, I've noticed my abs coming back in. I've noticed that I have like significant changes in body composition. So I would say you should probably spend like 4 or 5 times the length in a surplus than you do in a deficit, because it takes that much longer to build muscle. You need to commit to it. You need to spend a bit of time where you're a bit fluffier. It doesn't mean you're gonna stay like that forever. It takes commitment to get that heavy, because you're gonna have to like track your nutrition. Obviously you can do it where you just like, you YOLO it and you eat everything that's in front of you, and then maybe you might have more.
Who does that?
You might have more negative consequences if you do it that way. But I know for myself, the whole time I've been in a surplus, I track my food almost every single day. Obviously there's times here and there you're at an event, you can't really track properly, but I've so much experience built up that you can eyeball, you can guesstimate, you can do all of that. And now, it's actually been so easy over the last couple of weeks. Obviously, it's been a very short time frame that I've been in a deficit, but like, it's actually been a breath of fresh air not having to force feed myself for all this time. It's been so easy to come down to body weight. I could easily do this for another 6 weeks and then maybe bring it back down to 100 kilos or so. I don't want to do that just because of the goals that I have at the moment, but I could. And obviously, as you get to the end of that deficit, then you'll start having more of the diet fatigue and those negative implications of being in like energy restriction. But like, it's not really that difficult. It's simple in theory. You can have problems and nuances in the execution, but just spend more time in a surplus. Honestly, you can trim that down very quickly. Spend more time in a surplus. If I could go back and grab myself by the shoulders, spend more time in a surplus. That would be the number one thing.
The pros to cons list is just such a large discrepancy.
Yeah.
You know, the pros of staying in a surplus for longer versus the slight adjustment you have to make to accepting your body image. And we're not saying to go up 3 weight classes in 2 months.
Yeah.
Like, that doesn't happen. But what we're saying is, don't limit yourself. Don't hold yourself back because of all the pros we've just talked about. Something came to me there. What's the like Mount Stupid thing? Do you know?
Oh, the Dunning-Kruger effect?
Dunning-Kruger effect.
Yeah.
So at the start, you're stupid because you know nothing. In the middle, it's overly simplified at the start because you actually know, you don't know how to what am I trying to say? How to make it more complex. And then when you're in the middle and you peak in stupidity, it's because you think you know everything and you make it the most complex. And then on the other side, you go back to simplicity because you know more than you did when you peaked.
And you know what moves the needle, what is important, what has payoff.
And so now the idea of building muscle to get stronger is pretty simple. And that's where you start in the gym. I know when I started, it was just, well, I'll just get all my muscles bigger and hopefully I'll get stronger. And then in the middle, it's like, well, what about all these million other variables? And then now it's like, well, I've seen all those million other variables still have less of an impact as just gaining muscle, so it's back to simplicity. So it's great. It's really good. Yeah.
So first and foremost, build muscle. Number one. That should be your focus.
Yeah. Progress correlated to building muscle, building mass. Cutting is a different story.
So next thing, I think, and maybe this is unique to me, I don't believe so though.
Hit me.
Is to stop obsessing over those tiny details. Kind of like you had mentioned there, you figure out what is important, what moves the needle. I spent a lot of time thinking that training was this super precise, like exact science. And you needed to follow this like ultra specific concoction that was in your program. Otherwise, you would not progress. Now, maybe that is me and my like overly neurotic brain that went down that avenue, but whether you're overthinking the program structure itself, if you should be doing sets of 5 or sets of 7 or sets of 3, or your technique that you need to have your feet in a certain position or take a certain grip that's X amount internally rotated or externally rotated, or any combination of those little variables, I would get in my way so often by overthinking them and neglecting the massive detail of I'm not gaining weight. So if I could go back, I would say stop wasting your time on these tiny details. Now my outlook on training is literally just applying stress, letting the body adapt to that stress, removing some of that stress, and expressing those adaptations that you made. That's the way that I look at it now. Obviously, that's extremely simplified, perhaps oversimplified, but to an extent, that is how straightforward that it is. You can do 101 different training styles, and they will probably all work to a certain degree. Obviously, there's certain principles that we can follow that may lead to more success than others, but in general, you can do a lot of stupid stuff in training. But if you have the outside variables of like your nutrition, your sleep, your general stress management day to day in check, the training is very simple. It's not this super exact science. Don't worry. Surely the squeaking will be on the thing.
Yeah, we can
So yeah, I don't know if you would have any personal experiences with that, with the overthinking or overly analytical.
100%.
Yeah.
I think the Dunning-Kruger effect will probably explain much of our opinions here that we're going to explain. Similarly to food, and it can encompass everything with training, is over-complicating everything and missing the something for the trees?
Forest for the trees.
Missing the forest for the trees, looking at one tree as opposed to the whole forest, is, you mentioned there, that you can train in 101 different ways and they'll all work. And I think that is true as long as the main pillars, the simple pillars of training are being ticked off. As long as they're there, the smaller stuff doesn't matter. You know, how exactly you structure your training doesn't matter. The exact rep range, the exact technique. We saw a post recently we were discussing, was it Jesus?
Yeah.
Olivares?
So. Yeah.
And he was saying how, or was it someone else? He reposted someone else's who was saying, you know, stop fussing over technique, just get stronger. Again, a wild oversimplification, and there are times where technique could be improved or could be made more efficient. The likelihood is, for you and I, after how many competitions and how many years of lifting, we probably have found a technique that is very efficient for ourselves. We probably have, and our body has probably adapted to that. Our nervous system has probably adapted to that for it to feel good. We don't really need to change anything, right? So keeping those simple pillars in check, and the main drivers of progress we see: sleep, nutrition, stress, keeping stress to a minimum, and management of stress we'll talk about. But that's what matters, like. And it is, again, when you reach that peak stupidity of overcomplicating everything, and you just have to go back and relying on the simple pillars. Like instead of looking at one tree, it's the whole forest that matters. Like,
I have a post that I'm gonna put up on Instagram later about that, and it's along the same lines of stop overthinking your technique. Most people, obviously technique is important. We're not saying that technique isn't important and just go into the gym and do whatever. Okay, but most people, after they've been training for 6 months, you are going to have relatively efficient technique. You're going to have everything that you need in order to see progress.
Yes.
But more often than not, when people overcomplicate and overthink and overanalyze their technique, they get in their own way. So whether that is a situation that I often see, when you're carrying a bit more fatigue than usual, and you feel a little bit run down, you don't feel as strong, and you're going, this doesn't feel right, my squat doesn't feel right, let me see if I can make a technique change to get things feeling good again. So you do that. And then, say if your normal squat stance is quite narrow, and you have quite a lot of stress on your quad, say, you move to a slightly wider position, and the musculature is a little bit more fresh. Your adductors, your glutes, they're taking a little bit more of the load now. You've shifted some of that away from your quads. You do this for one session and it feels amazing. You feel really strong because you're a bit fresher. And you do that and you're going, I cracked the code, now I know the technique that works. Then you do that for 2 more sessions and now you've started to build up a bit of fatigue again. And now this new position feels shit. And then you're going, what? Like I thought I cracked the code, I thought I figured it out, what's going on now? So then you're panicking, you're going, okay, I need to change technique again. And then you move it to a slightly new position. And then maybe this feels good for one session. And then it feels bad again. And now you're in this cycle of thinking you need
go back
to continue.
to the old one and you're like, oh, amazing, it feels great.
And you keep running around in that circle, not realizing you had perfect technique, you just needed to drop a bit of fatigue.
Yeah, you're ignoring, and again, you're missing the forest for the trees. You're ignoring a very obvious factor here, which is fatigue. Like in all 3 technique pathways that you tried, the thing that the barrier that you encountered was fatigue. Oh, I've gotten so stressed now, and instead of looking
Just
at fatigue,
pulling that back.
you look at where can I change my technique so I can keep burrowing through the fatigue. It is the fatigue management that is far more important.
Yeah.
And when written on paper, I used to always wonder, like, why do people keep saying fatigue management? Like, what's that even mean? Like, just
What is that?
Yeah, just don't pass out during your sessions.
Right.
No. And so I think, you know, is that maybe one of our next points?
Yeah. I would even add on to that previous one, another situation where I myself would overthink technique, and I would see other people do the same, is sometimes chasing optimal, whether that be trying to have the widest sumo stance so that you're mega upright, even though that may not suit you and your leverages, or having like the widest bench grip that's super internally rotated and you're actually gripping like 3 centimeters outside of the rings, but you've got Japanese grip just to cover it, or doing things that just don't suit you because you believe that it is optimal, in air quotes, or looking at another lifter's technique who is seeing success and thinking that you have to emulate them so that you can see similar success. If you're a 6'3" guy and you're trying to squat like Russell Orhe, it's probably not going to work out for you. You don't need to try copy him or do what he's doing just because he's seeing success. It may not apply to you whatsoever. And it's instances like that where I find people can overanalyze and make changes that are not necessary, that end up hindering their progress more than if they just forgot about technique, lifted in a way that's comfortable to them, that meets the competition standards, and then focus on these bigger pillars of just building more muscle.
Yeah.
And then
this we are applying this as coaches as well.
Yeah.
Like a lot of the work we do is trying to stop our athletes falling into the traps we've fallen into, trying to stop them obsessing over technique. If they ask me about technique, and I think they're going to see progress if they stick with what they're doing. It might be more valuable than changing something tiny, as long as they're meeting the competition requirements. And it looks safe, it looks repeatable, consistent, it looks loadable, like they could actually add 5 kilos and it won't get exponentially harder, then it's sound, you know, rather than halt their progress because of changing.
Yeah. I find as well, oftentimes when you try to intervene as a coach and get someone to make some sort of like movement change, and you try to apply a cue to them based on like what you are seeing, oftentimes it can be quite difficult for that lifter to put that into action. Cues are only as good as the way that the lifter can interpret them and then put them into action. You may have an idea of what these certain words mean in your mind, but when you communicate that to someone else, they may not have that same understanding that you do. And oftentimes when you make a lifter overly aware of one tiny detail of the movement, you then can fall victim to like losing sight of the overall objective of the movement. If you're thinking about just where your knees are going in a squat, you're like trying to put this conscious thought over what should kind of be like a subconscious movement. And you end up like choking yourself. You end up making it. You end up making it way harder to execute on the movement. The weights feel heavier. You feel awful because you don't feel like you're executing it the way that the coach wanted you to do it. If you can't like pick up the cue straight away, it just leads to all of these negative outcomes more often than not. And one of the things that I've liked most about working with Joey is when we started straight away, he's like, yeah, your technique is sound. Let's just not worry about that again. Let's just get stronger now. So that's something that I try to implement as well. Obviously, we want to make sure that you're meeting the competition standards. If there's some glaringly obvious like movement inefficiency, we may try to address that. But other than that, if you're meeting the standards, you're lifting in a way that's comfortable for you, don't overthink technique. Just keep getting stronger, building more muscle. And oftentimes, as you build more muscle and get bigger, that can like wash out some of the issues with technique.
Oh yeah.
As you're like bigger and you have like more mass between your joints, there's more of your body like compressing against itself in a bench press, where your elbow is, your bicep pushing off your forearm, or your gut pressing against your legs in a squat. That can, even if like technique is not ideal, say, as you gain weight and build more muscle, that can kind of wash out some of those issues. So
some of the best technique improvements I've made happened by accident. Happened over time for my body just finding what was more efficient, where over a few weeks, over a few blocks, when you start to add load to the bar, obviously load to yourself as well, but load to the bar, your body, as long as you let it happen, kind of tends to find what's most comfortable. Sometimes that can happen in a way where it brings people away from the competition requirements, maybe blocking out a little bit less or things like that, cutting depth. And that's why those things happen. Most of the time, people aren't thinking, I'll cut depth. What's happening is, over time, your body's finding something more comfortable to meet what the box you're trying to tick, and your body's thinking, oh well, I can do this a little bit higher. But other times what's happening is, you know, I always refer back to in recent times when my squat feels off, I look back to a video from my best squat set. It was like 250 for 4, really good. I haven't been able to emulate it since. And I'm like, what was I doing there? But it's not, it wasn't conscious. This is the thing. And you made a very good point, and you brought up consciousness. Technique develops consciously when we're thinking about it, and then it becomes subconscious. Have I brought up conscious processing theory? No? It is essentially just saying that lifts, or it's broader. It's, you know, I think initially it was for golfers, where the golf swing is learnt and then becomes subconscious. So professional Tiger Woods, he knows how to swing subconsciously. He's not thinking through the steps. Sure, it looks like when he's lining the club up and he's kind of setting his feet up, he's thinking through these things. He's not. The swing is completely subconscious. Every 1% of that swing has become subconscious. Our squat, when I squatted 250 for 4, it was subconscious. What actually happens when you're trying to improve technique is it becomes conscious, is when you are basically revert back to a beginner. And when you're a beginner, you're not coordinated. When you think about how much of your body is working during a squat just to coordinate the squat, sure, it's your quads pushing through, but there is every single part of your body coordinated. So when you start to become conscious of all these things, you turn into Bambi. Whereas, but, you know, there's a reason that, you know, we're not thinking that it's just like drive, it's just push, it's just try as hard as you can. And that's what we try to fall into, because when you start to consciously process what's going on, you revert back to a beginner. That's the theory. And it's proven. You know what it feels like, where when you're taking out something like heavy on bench, the last thing you want to be thinking is like, okay, elbows, wrists, chest, all this. It's like, they're very subconscious cues. And that's why when we're giving cues, we try to just give like one at a time to avoid bringing people back to a beginner position in the moment.
Another analogy that I heard for that was really good was, say you work in an office, right? And you crumple up a bit of paper and the bin is 5 feet away. You throw it into the bin, swish, perfect. Then your coworker says, I'll give you a $5 if you can do that again. So now there's a bit of stakes. Maybe this comes into like sports psychology. There's a bit of like pressure on you now. You crumple up the next bit of paper, but now you're thinking, okay, I need to get this in because I need the $5. Okay, what did I do last time? I put my elbow in this position and then I released at this precise moment. And then you go to throw it again and you absolutely scuff it and it goes terrible. And when I heard this, it was talking about that trying to apply conscious thought to a subconscious action more often than not leads to a decrease in performance for those reasons that you explained there. And I think we can all relate to that
100%.
Situation there, that scenario.
That is catastrophe theory.
I
could be wrong. It was a while ago that I touched on this, but you just have to open up another door. And essentially what that is, or how I'm explaining it, is performance goes up with arousal to a certain point and then drops off. It's a catastrophe. You know, that's why it's called that. Instead of just being like an upside down U, it drops off hard when arousal goes beyond an appropriate threshold. So when you're coming out to the platform, we're getting super hyped up. Everybody does it slightly differently at Worlds. You have Antonio Perez singing, crying, you know, singing all these Spanish songs that I don't understand. I was getting loads of people to slap me. I love that, and I've learned over time that I can handle that level of arousal, and it's at that level of arousal that I perform best. Some people are very calm. Damien Nam would be an example that comes to mind. And it's not that you have to replicate my level of arousal or his. It's just about finding your own. But essentially, what happens is, and what's happening for that example, the most simple example. I'll give you a $5 if you get that in the bin again. So you're then becoming aroused by the idea that you could get the $5 and the stakes. That's what stakes do. They give you anxiety, and that feeds into arousal. So you become more and more aroused. It's like, okay, and then you start to consciously process. And I think that's what it leads to, is the arousal leads to conscious processing, or nerves or anxiety. It leads to an adverse psychological effect. So similar to the lifts, it's applied to the lifts. We're looking to get aroused, but not enough that we are consciously processing. So subconscious, high arousal, but not too high.
There we go. Jeez, that was good. That was psychology, baby. Psychology 101.
Yes, sir.
Okay, so that was 2 big points there, I think. Another one would be building momentum properly. This is one where we differ a little bit because our training styles are quite different. You have a bottoms-up approach. I have a bit of a top-down approach. So the ins and outs or the nuances may be a little bit different, but the general premise still applies of the necessity of building momentum within your training. So I'll let you go first, just with how you would structure your training or how you think about building momentum, and then I can talk about how it applies to my own.
I was hoping you'd go first there.
Okay.
Because I think
Yeah.
we have a pretty similar stance. And you mentioned the bottoms-up nature of our programming or our
Yeah.
coaching style. By nature, what that is saying is that we don't have an exact plan to work from. We have some pillars which we know should be ticked,
Yeah.
but we are exploring what works best
Okay.
given a set of circumstances,
Okay.
a lift of circumstances.
Maybe I will start then.
Yeah.
Because maybe my approach to training or like system of training is more common than that then, and maybe people maybe can grasp it a little bit easier. So my training is laid out in 4-week blocks, say, just like clearly defined 4-week blocks. You might start off week 1. We do singles within our program, so you'll start off a single at RP 6. It will go 6, 7 on week 2, 7 to 8, week 3, 8, week 4. And then you'll have your back offs from there. So for myself, what I did for years with training in this system or approach would be when I come into the gym, I try to lift as heavy as possible on this day and hit a weight that I could maybe still pass as the target RPE. So if I have an RPE 6 single, I'm trying to lift the heaviest that I can. That I can see, that I can still justify as a 6 if you squint your eyes and like
Look away.
That's what I did. And then when I was like following this kind of system, I would find that maybe I feel amazing on week 1. Week 2 feels okay. Week 3, I fall off a cliff where I just feel absolutely terrible and I have to drop the weight by like 20 something kilos. And then week 4, I actually kind of maybe feel a little bit stronger again because I like dropped off and dropped some fatigue. And then I come into the next block going, okay, that last block was kind of shit. Maybe I need to just even go harder this time. So then I'd start week 1 even heavier. And then week 2 actually feels terrible this time and I have to drop it back below what I did on week 1. There's just no momentum being built whatsoever. Yeah. Super inconsistent. 1 week's good, next week is bad, next week is maybe good again, next week is bad, next week is good, next week is bad. Yeah, just up and down, up and down, up and down because you're not giving yourself any momentum. You're just trying to go in and smash yourself into the ground every single training session that you do. So I had this issue where my primary squat day was so inconsistent because my secondary squat day, I was trying to push way too hard. So on my single on the primary day, my squat 250 kilos, and then my back offs, I might have sets of 5 that I do 210. But then on my secondary day, I might have triples on squat that are RPE 6 to 7. But I'm thinking an RPE 6 to 7 is only a couple reps shy of failure. So I need to squat like a 240 triple here. So that's what I would do. And then I'd come in on my primary day, dead. Like I'd take 220 and be like, this feels like it's a billion kilos on my back. I kept going through phases of that and not understanding. Again, it's just my naivety at the time. I couldn't identify what was going on. And this maybe ties into understanding your coach's intent with the programming. Yeah. So like open communication, you asking questions of the coach. And then from us, from like a coaching perspective, I try to give as much information as to what I mean or what I intend with the numbers on a spreadsheet, how I want you to execute that. Yeah. Because that's where the coaching actually comes in. The numbers on the spreadsheet may be interpreted differently based on the narrative that I give you of what we're trying to achieve in a given block. So it was about 2 years ago that coincided when I started eating in a surplus. I did a workshop with Joey where he basically just picks apart his whole coaching system and whole coaching philosophy and why he puts certain days the way he does, primary days, secondary days, tertiary days. We want the majority of our progress to be driven on the primary day. Secondary day is easier. It's just to like manage fatigue. We don't want to be trying to like drive any crazy amounts of progress on this day. Tertiary day is super chill. It's almost just like technique practice on that day. Yada, yada, yada. He dove into everything that related to me and the way that I was training. And it was like a light bulb moment. I was like, oh, I don't need to squat 240 every secondary day. And I pulled it back. And I almost pulled it back excessively to where I wouldn't even squat over like 170 on my secondary day. And my primary day was going to the moon. I was seeing the most progress that I ever have in my whole life. And I was like, okay, with a bit of experimenting on that secondary day to see what kind of ranges of loads that I can handle, I realized, okay, if I keep this day around like 200 kilos, I can push my primary day perfectly. So for me, over the last like 2 years, I don't think I've squatted above 200, 210 in a secondary day for sets of 3 or 4. And my primary day, on my back off work, I don't think I've squatted over like 220, but my squat has gone from a 270 single to a 307 and a half. And I thought that was impossible.
Yeah.
I thought I had to be lifting like 260 on my secondary day so that I would be like strong enough to be able to hit this heavy weight.
Yeah.
So I think it comes back to, you don't need to lift heavy all the time to be able to get stronger.
Yeah.
And if you do lift heavy all of the time, you're probably going to rack up too much fatigue and not be able to express strength and get stronger. So same for my deadlifts. I have a 337 and a half pull. I rarely rep anything over 250, 260. And I'll look at people online and see them repping 300 plus, but I have a higher 1 rep max than them. And going through those phases of experimenting with that for myself, not trying to copy other people and not trying to do what my favorite lifter is doing, experimenting with my own training, seeing what works well. And I have found that this far more reserved approach has led to the most success. So now when I have a 4-week block, my first week is essentially like a deload. So we want to shake off the fatigue from the previous block. What I will do is look at that week 4 that I have programmed, and I will work back from there. So week 4, I have a single at 8 and I have sets of 5 at RPE 8 as well. I'll go, what weight do I want to hit for this? Maybe it might be 2.5 more than my best set of 5 ever. Okay, let me work back to week 3. What's the lightest weight that I can hit on week 3 that will still allow me to feel prepared to take that jump to week 4? Because obviously if you super sandbag week 3, you just won't have that exposure to a heavy weight and you won't be able to make a reasonable jump to week 4. So anyway, what's the lightest weight that I can handle on week 2 that will allow me to feel prepared to handle that week 3 weight? And then back to week 1, this is a deload. What's the lightest weight I can take on week 1 that will allow me to feel prepared for week 2? And I feel fresh every single week. And I hit PRs almost every single block because I start off light, but still within a reasonable range that I can jump to. Maybe it's 10, 15 kilos each week. You can experiment with that for yourself. Maybe you might find that you like smaller jumps week 1 to week 3 and a big jump to week 4, maybe even jumps every single week, maybe a massive jump from week 1 to week 2 and so on. You can do it any sort of combination of ways, but experimenting, taking that lighter, more sub-max approach and enjoying actually feeling good when you come into the gym. You shouldn't feel super beat up all the time. It's such like a powerlifter thing that like, oh, I'm old and broken because I do powerlifting. You should not feel shit all the time. And that maybe coincides with me pushing accessory work harder, because a lot of my accessory work will be on, say, machines where there's a lot of like external stability. It's easy to push close to failure, isolation movements, chest press, shoulder press, leg extension, hamstring curl, these sort of machines that don't have a ton of systemic fatigue, say, but provide a potent stimulus for you to build more muscle. And then taking my competition work, very chill, very sub-max. Obviously, until you get closer to a competition, you increase specificity, you pull back on some of your accessory work. That has been the system that I follow. I take 3 or 4 months where it's super chill powerlifting work. I'm still squat, bench, and deadlifting in higher rep ranges, say, building up my skills with the comp lifts, building up my work capacity with the comp lifts. But the majority of my resources is just into building bigger muscles, so I have a bigger frame that then 3 months down the line, when I return to powerlifting specific training, I still have the skills maintained from the comp lifts, but I pour more of those resources into being strong for my 1 rep max, say.
By reducing accessory stress. Yeah, amazing. You explained that really well.
Yeah.
I guess as you spoke, I picked up on what differences there are between our trainings.
Yeah.
Because initially when I said it's going to be more similar than different, it's because the idea of building momentum is present in both. It's more just the minutia, what that looks like on paper. You know, you said your week 1 is the deload. Typically, I'll give someone like a pivot week between 2 different types of blocks. I think it could be because you guys have singles all the time, and that's kind of the stimulus that is ever present, whereas we rarely have. I'm saying that there's a lot of Odyssey lifters, and that in the nature of bottoms up, there could be someone who has an ever-present stimulus. But with my lifters, or myself even, what we'll have is a block where we have some sort of stimulus that is hopefully the main driver of, it's our day 1, it's our main day, our main driver of progress. Right? We'll pivot between them, so that is just a bridge, right? That'll act as the deload. and then I will hopefully be looking for them to build momentum throughout the block, the same way you will. It's just maybe on the singles is what you're talking about. Whereas for us, let's say if I move into a block of 4s, that's the main progress driver that they have in the block, or I have in my block. It's still the same. Week 1 will still be. You kind of work backwards. You're like, right, this can be difficult, and this is helpful to have a coach with. You're talking about your own lifting, but I'm sure as a coach you notice that it's helpful to work with the others and kind of decide the numbers with them. But what you're looking to do is start light enough that it's still not causing enough stress to be fatigued by the time you reach week 4, but heavy enough on each week to prepare you for the following week. And it's a building of momentum. Whereas years ago, what I would have done is seen 4 at 8 in my program, not understanding that I want to build momentum. Hit a real RPA, dead by halfway through the week, let alone next week. And then my numbers just kind of look this blurry, up and down, up and down, up and down, where I could never attach it to what I'm doing. Why am I feeling shit? And that's where you go to that's where you miss the forest for the trees. That's where you ignore fatigue, you ignore stress, and you look at, oh, well, what if maybe, he squats with his feet slightly wider, so I'll squat my feet slightly wider, and that'll feel better. When in reality, I was just going too hard all the time. And that's it. So there is a lot of commonalities.
And then just to touch on the psychological impact that has the knock-on effect on the rest of your training when you are building momentum and you come in each week and you're lifting progressively heavier weights, you feel good, you don't feel run into the ground. That fosters this positive feeling. You like training now. You enjoy coming in each week because I've set myself up based on last week to have a good session today. Whereas when you don't have that, and it's inconsistent, you're going, it's going to be pot luck what happens today.
It literally is.
I could come in and I could feel great, or I could come in and feel awful. And that makes you hate training then. Because you had this goal in your head, and then you come in and you feel terrible and you didn't live up to it.
You don't know when that is going to be achievable because you've no predictability, because you don't know about this building of momentum. Whereas when we come in after a week 3 where it wasn't that hard, but it was hard enough to prepare us for this week.
We know it's there. You almost know
this way. I'm well able.
Whereas you hate training, and that's when I hated training the most, was when I had this inconsistency. So it was a combination of not eating in a surplus, not knowing how to manage fatigue properly. I just hated it because I was like, why would I enjoy this thing where I come in and I feel terrible? And I don't look forward to training then, because I might come in and feel like I'm going to get crushed by whatever weight that I had in mind. You don't know how to even set appropriate goals then, because there is no pathway in front of you.
There's no
pathway. When you have clear stepping stones of I'm going to hit this, you have a direction. It's easier to stay on the path then. When it's just higgledy-piggledy, you have no idea what's going on. You hate it. You hate training. So did you like that one, higgledy-piggledy?
That's completely thrown me off. I'm going to try to use that one. I don't think I've ever said that in my entire life. Higgledy-piggledy.
Oh, God. So, the last topic to touch on. I think I'll let you take the reins, because you will have more experience with this than I have had.
So the next topic is, we wrote down as response to pain. I was going to use the last topic, and where we're talking a lot about fatigue and pushing hard all the time. I was going to use that to bridge into pain. And the reason I didn't is because it makes pain sound maybe more predictable than it is. Because, yes, I can definitely associate times of pain with times where I was doubling down, having high stress and not managing fatigue very well, not looking at building momentum, but rather just pushing. Any time my body was able to push, I'd push. And sure, that in my head and in your head, that probably makes sense that those are times where you're more likely to experience pain. Most susceptible. But pain can just come whenever. It can be unpredictable. And it is one of the most frustrating experiences, as any sports person I'm sure can agree with, in powerlifting. You've no field sport, you've no other players bumping into you, you've no ground that your boots can get stuck in and hurt your knee and all this. So it's very frustrating when very simple movements are difficult to complete because of a pain experience in your body. I have had a few significant pain experiences that affected my training, my ability to train significantly over a large period of time. And I, now looking back, don't think that the pain experience itself took me out for 6 months. It was my response to the pain that kept me from lifting sufficiently for progress for 6 months.
Interesting.
what happens now? And every time one of my clients texts me, or anytime I have pain, this is what Adam tells me, and I tell myself, but I still like to hear from Adam, is you're going to take pretty much the exact same approach. You're going to do as much as you can that is normal, and then anything that the pain feels it's inhibiting, just pull back a little bit. Just pull back. And what I tend to do is, for instance, let's say someone has a squat set 3 at 7, but they hurt their knee a week prior, and their knee is pretty sore. So 200 kilos was the 3 reps at 7 the week before. So what they're still going to do is they still have a 3 at 7.
Yeah.
But now they have a pain threshold as well.
Okay.
So I would recommend, it's hard because what 3 out of 10 means to one person can mean something else. But what I'm looking for them to do, or myself, is just don't make yourself uncomfortable. If you can still squat and it doesn't feel like your knee's about to pop and you're not crying and all this, then that's fine. And then go to whichever one comes first. So if you reach a 3 out of 10 at 150 kilos, even though you squatted 200 kilos last week, that's okay. That's completely fine. And we do this until that 150 becomes 200 again and the pain just dissipates. Preface, if your bone is sticking out or you can't breathe because of pain, you're going to go to a physician, you're going to go to the hospital, you're going to go to your GP, whatever. But generally, the pains and niggles that pop up in powerlifting are more than often like stress niggles. They're like, my knee is very sore because I'm squatting all the time, my quads are under high stress, my joints are under high stress, and all you have to do is allow them to recover. Whereas in the past, what like comes to mind for significance? I guess I had like glute, and actually no, I kind of acutely hurt my adductor, right? Where it was the day after squatting, I couldn't bodyweight squat for like a week. And then I managed to lift anyways. I competed soon after, but then when it got really sore, I pulled right back because I kind of ignored the pain threshold for a little while. That's not even the example I'm going to use though. After that, I ran into some hip, glute, sciatica, low back pain that was just there all of the time. I couldn't deadlift 100 kilos without having the shooting pain up and down my back. And I threw in the towel. I said I won't deadlift at all. And what that led to was, like 3 to 4 months of no deadlifts? Whereas I not guarantee, but if I could go back, what I would do in place of that is deadlift what I can up until a comfortable threshold. So that might have been 100, that might have been 120. And over the weeks, I would have just found myself lifting again, as opposed to just not lifting at all. And then when I came back, the pain is still there. Yeah. Not all pain is like this.
And then you just felt super detrained.
I was just super detrained and super worse. And then I had to do that exact thing when Adam kind of opened my mind to this idea of just going in and exposing your body to the range of motion that you are afraid of and that hurts. And your body just gets used to it again. And I just had to start that process when I went back after 3 or 4 months. So yeah, I guess that was a lot of words that came out there. The biggest thing is not to panic in response to pain. That's probably the biggest thing. And I'm sure, I know you put this to me, but you've had pain. And the better experiences you've had with it is when you don't panic. You manage it as best you can through allocating as much recovery resources as you can to it, not pushing past a point of discomfort, and then all of a sudden you're lifting again.
So this kind of touches on the biopsychosocial model.
That's important.
This is something that I'm not super confident talking about. It's still an interesting topic that I'm still learning about. But I suppose you'll probably be able to explain what it is better than I will. But in my bastardized, paraphrased way, the beliefs that you have around something will significantly shape that experience that you have with it. So for myself, whenever I have run into pain experiences, my approach is to just kind of ignore it. So like not to panic, to say, okay, this hurts right now. But a lot of times with the pain experiences that I've had, they're very short-lived. So thankfully, I've never had something that is too overwhelming to where I couldn't lift. I may have a niggle in my back and I say, okay, I know this is probably going to hurt for 3 or 4 days. I'm going to do what I can in the meantime. I'm going to allocate as many recovery resources as I can, get as much sleep as possible, eating at least at maintenance, perhaps in a slight surplus, trying to manage stress as best as possible, not doing things that make it feel worse, not trying to like pick the scab and like, okay, it hurts when I do this, so let me keep doing this.
I hope you could see that on the camera. I don't know what the fuck that was. If I just keep doing this?
Yes, so anyway, and more often than not, within like a week, the pain is significantly less, and then the following week, it's just totally gone. And that's kind of like the running joke now, that whenever I have pain, I'll just ignore it and it'll go away by itself. But from talking to people about this biopsychosocial model, that seems to be kind of the best play. If you can not catastrophize the situation and stress out even more, because that increased stress will then likely inhibit the recovery process
100%.
and make the whole pain experience even worse, and then make you more likely to make poor decisions around the pain experience. Not stressing out is probably one of the best things that you can do. Allocate recovery resources. As you said, still do what you can, pain-free ranges of motion, working through a certain pain threshold. That would be my approach to it at the moment. It's something that I find very interesting to learn about because there's a lot of, I wouldn't even say necessarily conflicting ideas, but maybe conflicting ideas with the traditional, say, rehab approach of going to a physio and they say do 100 banded clamshells or something to fix your squat, even though you can squat 400 kilos, whatever it is. It's probably not going to heal you, as opposed to the new understanding of pain and the biopsychosocial model and all of the variables that contribute to that. It's something that I definitely want to learn a lot more about. It's not something that I'm super confident on at the moment, but so long as you are trying to improve the knowledge you have around it, I'd say that's all we can really do.
Back to and involving other points that we previously mentioned, avoiding overcomplication, right? Missing the forest for the trees. People will wrongfully attribute their pain to things or try to, it's very natural to want to know why something happened, and so you can avoid that or so you can fix that. And so that's where these like corrective exercises tend to come in, where in reality it's probably just a build-up of stress. And then when you consider the biopsychosocial model and the impact psychology can have on a pain experience, there's countless reasons why you might be in pain and what's contributing to the pain. So I remember Adam the first time he said to me that, do you think it could be sore because you
think it's sore?
Because you think it's sore? And I was like, fuck off, you don't know my pain. Well, he was very much so correct. If I was, almost activating that idea of pain, that activation runs down. Like I'm almost looking for the pain. It's like when you're looking for a squeeze in an accessory. If you're looking for it, you can find it. So if you're looking for the knee pain, you can find it. And this is not to say that this isn't a stressful, difficult experience to deal with. It just means overcomplicating doesn't help at all. And psychology plays a significant role in your recovery from pain. So chill out.
Yeah, I
Talk
like
to your coach.
I like it. That's some valuable information in this podcast.
Well done.
I think we're all out of ideas.
Before we go, think of one on the spot. What's one stupid thing you did? Right, you did specifically. This might not affect everyone. What's one stupid thing you've stopped doing?
Leading into competitions before, I remember this was before World Championships 2021. I wasn't happy with how squats were feeling. In hindsight, this kind of ties into the fatigue management thing. I didn't realize if fatigue was the issue, that's why I felt bad. I thought it was my technique. So I had a 3x2 for my last session before the competition. And it was meant to be like RPE 5, so super easy. But I took the 3 doubles and I was like, no, it doesn't feel good. Like it still feels bad. Let me take another double. And I took another double then trying a new stance with. And I was like, that doesn't feel good either. Let me try a new stance. And I took another double. I ended up doing like 10 sets, which was way more than I was supposed to do for the session. And each set just felt bad. It felt worse. So then I went into the competition with nothing behind me. The last experience that I had of squatting was me changing my stance 10 different times. And I didn't come to a solution in the end, but I just realized I can't do any more sets. Like I've already way overdone what I was supposed to do. And obviously in that competition, I didn't perform very well because I did not taper at all. I ended up doing like 3 times the amount of work I was supposed to do. So that's a stupid experience that I had. What about you?
Honestly, what comes to mind is one of the first times I maxed out, I put chalk in my legs because I didn't know what talc was. So
that's a classic.
That's a classic. I'm sure we could actually make a whole podcast on just funny shit we've done in powerlifting. That was great. That was really good.
That was very good. I think we should plug our social medias. What's your Instagram? What's your TikTok? What's your?
It's Andrew Rowe _Odyssey on Instagram.
Andrew Blackwood _ Instagram, and then TikTok Andrew _Blackwood. YouTube, Andrew Blackwood _ and then
what is my TikTok? Andrew.Rowe.
You'll find it.
Yeah, you'll find it.
You'll find it. We're 2 Andrews, 1 Barbell on YouTube, and 2 Andrews, 1 Barbell on Spotify as well. You can go to Odyssey Strength for coaching if you like this fella. You can go to Evolution Powerlifting if you like me. All the best. Thank you for listening. See you in the next one.